one and all, and listen to tales of excitement and adventure. Tales of daring heroes, savage monsters, and bards who just couldn't keep it in their pants. Tales of friendship, nobility, drunken foolishness, and unforgettable fun. These are tales of role-playing games, fair listeners, and this is Rollin' Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide. Good evening, Boneheads, and welcome to Rollin' Bones, your RPG treasure trove. My name is Ryan Howard. I am your host and king of the Boneheads, and joining us again this evening, you know her from several different games. She's had several big announcements come out, and she's back on Rollin' Bones following the Jungsha campaign that we talked about last time. Ladies and gentlemen, Boneheads alike, give it up for Banana Chan. Banana, welcome back.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for having me back on the show.
Absolutely. Anytime. You are, as we were talking about before the show, you're always working on so much at the same time. There's always plenty to talk about, even if some of the stuff we can't actually talk about.
Unfortunately, yeah, but I try to stay busy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I did promise a funny story when we went on the air about one of the projects you worked on not too terribly long ago, that being Betrayal at Mystery Manor, the Scooby-Doo version of Betrayal at the House of the Hill. And I might have oversold this as a funny story, but it's definitely...
I'm still curious.
It's definitely a interesting look at... the group dynamic of one of my friend groups. But one of my friends was, shooting us a group message, and he said, "Hey, everyone, check this out. Someone made a Scooby-Doo version of Betrayal," and just kind of ran down all the stuff in the game. And the assumption amongst my group was that this was like a fan project or something that someone did just in their spare time. And I was like, I know someone who worked on that, and that just kind of got glossed over. And then later, one of my friends was like, "Wait, this is real?" And the friend who brought it up was like, "Yeah, this is actually like a real thing. This is a real product." And
That's awesome.
Posted the box art and everything. I was like, "Yeah," and I know someone who worked on it. And even then, they were just like, "Okay, yeah, whatever. This is real."
That's really funny. I think before this had become like a thing, there were people out there that were making their own hack versions of Scooby / Betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they came into contact with a previous project that someone had been working on for their own personal use.
Oh, I mean, like everything they posted, links and everything. I was like, no, that's the one. That's Banana's game.
Well, did you get a chance to try it at least?
I haven't gotten the chance to try it yet because that friend group's in North Carolina and I'm in Tennessee. So
yeah, it's a little tricky to play games right now, unfortunately.
Yep. Yeah, but I mean, a Scooby-Doo version of Betrayal seems like a layup to me. It honestly surprises me that we got a D&D version of Betrayal before we got a Scooby-Doo version.
Yeah, that's a good point. It probably had something to do with the licensing. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure what the details are, but it probably has something to do with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't remember who holds the Scooby-Doo license. It might be AT&T at this point, but I can see, with Wizards being, a parent company and Hasbro, mm-hmm. It's easy to get the D&D license to make Betrayal at Baldur's Gate, more so than having to go through the red tape of dealing with Warner Brothers, AT&T to get Scooby-Doo. So
that
makes sense.
Yeah, because just, I mean, not that I'm assuming that, all the departments or all the, different umbrella companies are all in the same,
Mhm.
office or anything, but I'm assuming it'd be easier since they're all under Hasbro.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, like from the first time I played Betrayal, I just looked at this and I was like, you could. This is a Scooby Doo game, just in everything but name. Now, one of the party like turning on the other ones and some of the grisly stuff that can happen. It's like a little bit more grimdark Scooby Doo, but still, the
Hmm.
pieces are all there. So the fact that that's out there is amazing, and again, the fact that it's you who worked on it, also amazing.
Thank you. I hope people like it. I did quite a bit of research on Scooby. I mean, I was a fan before this as well, but I had to rewatch a lot of episodes of Scooby Doo, Where Are You, and some of the movies as well, just to get the haunts together.
Yep. Scooby Doo it's one of those franchises that I just love.
Hmm.
I will always have a love and appreciation for Scooby Doo. Pretty much everything Scooby Doo is great. The theme park that I went to growing up, Carowinds, there was a Scooby Doo ride where you went through a haunted. It was like the Buzz Lightyear ride at Disney. You went through a haunted house and you had like laser guns and you shot
What?
ghosts, basically.
That is so cool.
Yeah,
I
so
would. Is it still there, or is that?
the ride is still there, but it used to be Paramount's Carowinds. Now it's just Carowinds and it's owned by Cedar Fair, so all the license stuff went
Mhm.
away. So the ride itself is still there, but it's not Scooby Doo anymore, and they scrubbed all the Scooby Doo off of it,
Oh, that's really
unfortunately.
sad. But I mean, I'd still probably go. It sounds like a fun place.
Oh, yeah, Carowinds is great. Carowinds is one of my favorite places on earth. But even more than that, I had a best friend down the street who was super into Scooby Doo. I watched What's New Scooby Doo growing up, as well as Scooby Doo Where Are You? The fact that What's New Scooby Doo is like 20 years old now still kind of boggles my mind.
Yeah, it is really strange to think about that. Like some of these episodes are now probably 10, 15, 20 years old. I mean, Where Are You is well, I guess that's
That's
a
like 50
lot of
years old
years.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's 50. Oh, right, because the 50-year anniversary was recently.
Mhm.
Yeah, so yeah, it's really weird to think about.
Mhm. And even those silly, ridiculous movies that came out in the early 2000s, I have a lot of affection for.
Hmm. Yeah, I really liked did you remember the Cyber Chase one?
Yes.
That was like
Mhm.
that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that one.
A few years ago, when my wife and I were still dating, um, I got my niece for like her 6th or 7th birthday. I guess it would have been her 6th birthday. I got her a DVD collection of, I think it was Cyber Chase, Zombie Island, the
Oh,
vampire one where it's at a rock festival. I can't remember what that one's called. And then The Witch's Ghost. Those were the
oh,
four
those
that
are
were in there.
good.
Yeah.
That's a good series of movies. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I would say out of all of them, probably Zombie Island is my favorite.
Mhm.
Though it doesn't have anything to do with zombies, really. I mean, it kind of does, but it's more like cat people, right? It's like we're cat
Mhm.
people
Yeah.
and like fewer zombies. But yeah.
Mhm. Oh, with zombies, you get into this weird gray area of they're a classic horror monster, and you want to be able to show them in Scooby Doo, which showcases classic horror. But then you get into the whole undead, and it's for kids. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. That's a tricky line to walk, especially for like if you're writing for kids or if you're
Mhm.
making content for kids. It's a little it's some stuff that you have to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And lest anyone think we're getting too far afield of role playing games, remember that Matthew Lillard plays D&D. So to tie it all back together.
Yes, he does. Imagine playing D&D with Matthew Lillard. That would be so cool.
That yes, that would be amazing.
Hmm.
There was there was this one episode of Big Bang Theory. You guys are going to have to forgive me for bringing this up, but it was like a celebrity D&D game night that the guys kept rotating in and out of, and it was Will Wheaton was running it, but it was Joe Manganiello, Kevin Smith, Kareem
Oh,
Abdul-Jabbar, and William Shatner. And I know like two of them don't play, William Shatner and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but Kevin Smith and Joe Manganiello
yeah.
being in there was hilarious.
Yeah. I finally got to meet Will Wheaton for the first time. I think like a few months. I can't even tell the difference between like months anymore. But I finally got to meet him for the first time, and he's very cool. He's very nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Elfie will be very happy to hear that. My wife is a huge Star Trek fan, and
Oh,
even though
awesome.
she's more into DS9, but I think I could convince her to play another game of D&D if I could somehow get Will Wheaton involved.
Yeah, I feel like he would probably be really chill with that. He's
Hmm.
now a brand ambassador for bicycle cards. So he's getting back into games a lot.
Hmm. Long as he stays away from dice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so beyond Betrayal at Mystery Mansion, which obviously is fantastic, to kind of tie up some ends from the last time you were on the show. Um, Obviously, at this point, the campaign for Zhengshe is closed. You guys have the print materials submitted,
Yes.
and at this point, myself and the rest of the backers were just kind of waiting for fulfillment to begin. So, uh, what are you guys kind of looking towards the future? What do things look like for Zhengshe once the backer fulfillment begins? What does that process
Oof.
kind of look like for you guys?
Um, so I could talk a little bit about what it looks like behind the scenes with publishing in general. So what it looked like from the beginning was that we got, all of our print materials ready, all of our graphic design, all of our art, all of our written stuff ready. So we had to go through all the stretch goals and everything and get that handled before we could send it out to layout. So Matthias Benici, he's our graphic designer slash layout artist, and he did such an amazing job going through all of our edits and all of our many probably we got a little bit too much of like a perfectionist mindset near the end, but he managed to go through all of it. He was very patient with us, and he fixed up the PMP for us, the print and play for us. So that's already sent out to backers. And now, after a bit of time, he's gotten to do all the print stuff. So the print stuff is already ready. It's been sent to the printers. The printers, what they do from here on out is send us proofs. So usually they send us three different kinds of proofs. So the first proof would be the digital proof. So everything is, laid out in the correct way. There are no spelling mistakes. The artwork is correct. All of that stuff. And then the second proof would be the print proof. So the first print proof is usually just like on sheets of paper. So it's like sheets of paper, and everything would be laid out on these sheets. And you would just like read through it, make sure that everything, anything that's double-sided is correct. All the materials are correct before sending out a sort of like a final proof. So the final proof is like the physical proof. So you get the box, you get like everything, all the components inside. And then once that's been approved, then they start shipping out the materials, like the units, the copies, out to our distributor. So once those are done, sent to the distributor. The distributor handles all the shipping all over the place, and they take care of that. So luckily, it's like an easier process if you were to send it out to a distributor. We have to pay them a fee, of course, but it is a lot easier doing it that way versus doing it all yourself.
Mhm. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have to applaud you guys for running a great campaign here. Um,
Thank
I've
you.
made a couple videos recently, just kind of complaining about the Kickstarter process as a whole, because again, in the interest of clarity, everyone who is a regular on the show, you guys already know about my woes as far as the Batman the Animated Series Kickstarter. But suffice it to say, I am dealing with one Kickstarter campaign as a backer where the company is making promises and then not following up on those promises,
Mhm.
and they're overextending themselves greatly and causing a lot of strife in the comment section. And you guys
Ooh.
have been great about communication. You know, obviously, sometimes circumstances are out of control.
Mhm.
Things happen. Kickstarters, you know, you can never tell what's going to end up happening or how long things are going to take. And I just want to say that you guys have been great about making sure that everyone is up to date on what's going on, and just, you know, keeping a good community there in the Kickstarter campaign,
Thank you.
whereas other companies have been just kind of letting it get out of control as far as people being upset and
Thank you.
giving them reasons to be upset. And you guys have not given us any reason to be upset, so thank you.
Thank you. Honestly, that's really nice to hear. We were lucky in, well, I guess maybe not lucky. We did plan a little bit ahead. So Sen and I did write the bulk of the stuff already. So we were hoping that the units would have been shipped out to everyone sooner, but unfortunately, pandemic and the shipping costs have risen, and also there's a shortage in shipping containers, which is kind of strange. I mean, it's not strange, it's to be expected, with everything that's going on right now. But that's really nice to hear. So thank you. Thanks for being so patient with all of us and hanging in there with everything.
Absolutely. And it's a game that when I backed it, I knew exactly who I was going to play it with, and this kind of, you know, delay in the process has given it more time for things to clear up so that everyone can kind of be comfortable coming together, and I can
Mm-hmm.
actually play this game in person with these people once it arrives. Hopefully, you know, things will be good, and they'll be good to, you know, come over and play it actually. So that's at least a silver lining of the delays itself.
Yeah, that's, I'm glad that worked out. Yeah, it's been very strange lately.
And speaking of Send, you guys are actually working on a few games this year. What all are you guys currently working on? You know, which of these games can you talk about? Tell us a little bit about what you and Sen have coming up now that things are rolling, as far as the sending out of Junction.
So, we are working on a few different things. I don't want to say too much about what's going on with Jiangxi just yet because we're not entirely sure what's going on with it just yet.
Yeah.
But we are thinking about different kinds of mediums for the story. So I can say that, but I can't say anything else about it just yet.
Yeah.
We are also working on three different games together for this year. When they're released, we're not entirely sure just yet. But we can say that they have been picked up. They are going to, they're hopefully going to get either released on Kickstarter. Sorry, not released, but they're going to go to Kickstarter either this year or next year. Um, so stuff is happening. One of them that I think I can talk about is a rock band game. So you're playing two, I guess like two. Actually, I'm not too sure how to explain this. So you're playing like your kid self as like, a kid who's like in your senior year and you're like starting a rock band or you're ending a rock band, to be more exact. And later on, you're going to be playing as your adult self 20 years later after the band's been broken up and everything as like a little reunion type of thing. So it's got this sort of ennui that's happening, where, you are playing in the majority of the game as like a kid, and you have to figure things out. You have to like sort out the bands, trying to make sure that you get merch, trying to get like the equipment ready and all of that. Meanwhile, the player you, like, in the back of your mind, you know that the band's going to break up.
Hmm.
So you're trying to give it your all, and you're trying to make this like the best night possible for your band, even if it's not going to be. That's all determined by like scoring and all that stuff at the very end. Um, but then like the sort of like bittersweet moment is when you meet up as adults and you're just like reminiscing about the past. So the game is really cool. It's sort of like this DIY thing where you're making a poster. Each scene that you have, when you finish a scene, you go ahead and you find like a magazine and you like flip through the pages and you find like an image that best represents that scene, and you cut it up and you like paste it on the poster.
That is super interesting. I will go ahead and put myself down as being in for this
Thank you.
for several reasons. I am a huge rock music fan. For one, I used to, before Rollin Bones ever existed, I did a podcast that started specifically just about one rock band and
Ooh.
expanded to be about rock music in general. That one band was Rush. For anyone who's curious, that
I'm Canadian, so
yeah,
I'm I'm very interested in this podcast now.
yeah. Unfortunately, because once I moved, I was unemployed for a while and I couldn't afford to keep the servers up. That podcast
Uh,
is lost to time, so it's not
oh,
available anymore. Um, but I did years and years of content just about Rush, and then years of content about other albums that myself and my co-host at the time were interested in. So music is a passion of mine, and I live in Nashville. I'm surrounded by it.
right. Yeah. That's
But
super cool.
also, one of my favorite movies, like top 5 movies of all time, is That Thing You Do.
Oh.
Yeah. So this.
Well,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say you might really enjoy this game.
Yeah, the idea of simultaneously being like we're young, we're at the height of our powers, we can do anything, we can be the greatest rock band in the world, but knowing in the back of your mind as the player that this is not going to at some point this is all going to end, and
Right.
we're gonna come back later after this ended before we thought it was. That sense of youthful vigor and energy and pushing towards being the greatest rock band of all time, but knowing it's not going to last, knowing that the rug's going to get pulled out from under you at any minute. That appeals to me as someone who loves rock music and loves stories about stuff like that. So I'm in.
Awesome. Well, if you have some time later, maybe we could schedule a playtest.
Definitely, just let me know.
Awesome.
It also sounds like there's a little bit of Bill and Ted in there as well.
Uh, there is a little bit. So I would say Bill and Ted 3 more
Okay.
than
Yeah.
Bill and Ted like the 1 and 2.
Mhm.
Just because of I would say like the back and forth like age thing.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I mean, that sounds amazing. Do, are you guys like revealing a title for it now, or is that coming down the line? What's this game called?
So we do have a title. It's called
Okay,
One Night Only. And I'm not sure if I'm allowed to release any other details
okay,
about it just yet.
go for it.
But hopefully, I think it's coming out sometime this year on Kickstarter.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, that will be a ton of fun. I'm especially looking forward to, and I know you can't say much else about it, but I'm looking forward to seeing like what kind of art comes with this game. Like if
Oh, I am so excited for the art. I cannot wait for the art. Um, I think alongside with the art, I think just like having an artifact as well, like after playing the game, it's cool to have something, right? Like
Mhm.
that represents your playthrough. So I'm excited to see what people come up with when they piece this thing together.
Definitely. Yeah, the idea that you're making your own poster as you go. I mean, like you mentioned, there are very few ways that you can like truly have an artifact of a campaign. I try to keep artifacts of campaigns through like miniatures. I always do a miniature for the big bad, but other than that, like if the game just doesn't use miniatures, like this game won't
Mhm.
unless you try very very hard, I suppose.
Yeah, I used to keep all my old character sheets, but
Mm.
it's gotten to the point where it's like, where am I going to keep all these?
Yeah.
Like, what do you do with them?
Mhm. But there is something very cool about having a physical thing that reminds you of a specific group that you played with, and having something like that where
Mhm.
I can look over at my Balor miniature that I have over here and remember the first campaign I ever ran. You could look at that poster and remember the fun time you had with your friends playing that game.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope that people will enjoy making their own pieces of art. And like if they wanted to digitize it and post it online, that would be cool too. So we could see what you make.
Definitely. Definitely. Cool. So yeah, I mean, super excited about that. God, that sounds amazing. You just
I'm
blew my mind
glad.
there. I love that.
I'm really glad. I really hope that you like this game. It's been a little weirder play testing it online, just because like you don't have a like a physical poster. Everything's like digital. So we're using what we got. We're using slides like Google Slides. We're using like Jamboard, different apps like that. Um, and what we're asking players to do is we're asking them to like save photos on the internet, like whatever you find online, just like copy and paste it onto like the poster itself. So it still has it still uses the same mechanics, kind of. um, but it's going to be interesting comparing and contrasting like the two different styles.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And this also fits thematically, although it's a different genre. It's a game about music, but also with that you guys did a K-pop game as well too, right?
Yeah, yeah. I published recently under Game and Akuri, Cleo Gunsu Davis and Vicky Ho's game Battle of the Boy Bands.
Mhm.
So that's like it's a card game. It's a take that slash drafting card game where you're playing music managers, boy band managers, and you're trying to like make the best boy band, and you're trying to sabotage other people's boy bands and do all the fun stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, I imagine people get pretty into that because I know that boy band fandom has never died.
Yeah, I think it's lasted since what was it? I mean, I guess like the Beatles were the original boy band, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been a long run.
And like everyone seems to like stick to their guns as far as their band of choice, whether you're of the NSYNC Backstreet Boys generation or you're the Jonas Brothers generation or One Direction. My
Mhm.
my older sister still sticks to 98 degrees and I don't.
So I think okay, maybe it's not 98 degrees, but one of our backers actually got a boy band, like a member of a boy band, to like say, like make a video for us, which was just like it was the coolest thing ever. But I can't remember which band he was from. He's like, oh, I mean, he's not like, a kid
Mhm,
anymore. He's not in his like, early teens, late early 20s or whatever.
mhm.
Or sorry, late teens, early 20s anymore. He's like, I think like our age or, in his 40s. Um, but it was really exciting to
Oh
see
yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's great.
Mhm.
But yeah, that stuff like that is always very interesting. Turning another medium into the gaming medium, and the different ways that you can do that is extremely fascinating. And so it's cool that you guys are working with people who do that, and then also doing it yourself with this one night only that's coming at some point. I'm super excited for that game now. I'm
I'm really
honestly.
glad. Yeah, I would love to have you play a test, or like, even sit in a session or like, go through our notes or something if you want.
Absolutely. I'd love to do that.
Cool.
So, aside from that, what else do you currently have going on? Like, what what kind of let me put it this way: what project are you super excited about right now that you're able to talk about?
So I am very excited for Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. The team that I worked with on that was great. That was a super fun project. I'm also really excited for Dune Adventures in the Imperium. That's coming out, I believe. I believe that's being released in April. So Dune is April. Oh, sorry. Yes, Dune is April, and then Ravenloft is May. And then I think I'm also working on a game with Austin Knight and Amanda Call. We're working on a game together called Deimos Academy, which is a coloring book tabletop RPG. Um, so you're all and this is sort of like similar to One Night Only in terms of like your adults returning back to this old boarding school that's very creepy that you used to attend as kids, and you're trying to figure out why you're all there. You're trying to figure out like what's the creepy thing that lives under this boarding school. So I'm very excited for that.
Absolutely. Now, as far as the coloring book side of things, is that like a mechanical factor in the game, or is that just like here's the book and it's also a coloring book? How does that factor in?
So it does have mechanics. So the coloring book is actually a part of the mechanics.
Gotcha.
And how it works is you are going to different rooms in the boarding school. So as you're collecting memories, as you're rolling dice, certain things will allow you to color in parts of the room. And when you color things in, that lets you remember things as your character. And you're also able to fill in fears. So your fears, as you go through different rooms, they get collected and they turn into the big bad thing at the very end that you have to overcome or defeat. At the very end, we're using this sort of maze thing. So using your coloring pencils, you're trying to go through this maze and escape the boarding school. And when you fail rolls or when you don't do so well, you get new clothes for your character. So the characters, like they're little paper dolls that Amanda Call is working on, and they're gorgeous. These paper dolls, they get paper clothes that get pinned on them when they like don't do so well in roles, and that sort of like represents them returning back to the school that they used to go to.
Gotcha. I'm noticing a theme in a lot of this stuff that you're working on of kind of the mixing of mediums within kind of the gaming sphere. Has that become something that you're like passionate about as a creator? Is that kind of where your head's at recently? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think so. So I started getting into games, or writing games at least through LARP. And I did a lot of like weird experimental LARPs, and that was like sort of one of the things that got me really passionate about writing and making and, you know, doing things that are experiential for people to play, for people to participate in. Um, I think games are sort of like, it's nice to have like a category or a label for a game so that that way you know what to get yourself into, like, you know what to expect. But I think also at the same time, it's nice to experiment with mediums. It's nice to, sort of look at what other things are out there so that you can sort of incorporate that into your own medium and into your own games. Um, my dream is to have a diorama RPG. Like, I would love to have a dollhouse RPG. And I was working on that. That's actually what Demos Academy was supposed to be. But I realized that dollhouses are very expensive, and it's probably not a good idea to ask people to spend like a lot of money on like different, dollhouse parts or dollhouse stuff. But it is a dream. It is like something that I want to do eventually.
Yeah, that's. I mean, talk about ambition. that, that would be an undertaking, I imagine.
Yeah. So we have thought about it. We were like, working on it. What I wanted to do originally was a take on the Nutshell Studies, which is a series of dioramas from this I would say like artist slash heiress with a lot of time. And so her name was Frances Lee Glesner, and she made like a whole series of these murder doll houses. So in each of these dioramas, she would depict like murder scenes. And they were so, like very detailed. They were so detailed that I think eventually forensic scientists were like, "Hey, we should use this for our own classes and things like that." And it was like on an exhibition some time ago in Washington, D.C., and I was like so excited about it because I've been wanting to like look through it for a very long time. So that sort of like ignited this like I want to make a murder dollhouse and I want people to like play with this thing. Which of course later on I was just like, this is very expensive. Maybe I should think about this. So we tried to do it with paper. We tried making like paper dolls. We tried making like paper dioramas and everything. And it worked. It was definitely a thing that did work. But then later on, we came to the conclusion that not everyone likes papercraft, and this would be like a very, very hard sell.
Yeah, definitely. And Elfie used to work at like an upscale toy store,
Ooh.
specifically focused on dolls. So having there is a market out there that would be super interested in something like that. The trick would be finding the cross section of doll collectors and role players, or getting doll collectors to try role playing. Because I could see uh, if you could somehow sell an RPG of some sort, like a codified rule set of basically play for
Mm-hmm.
something like Barbie or American Girl, an established
Mm-hmm.
brand, something like that
Yeah.
would be super interesting, at
Yeah.
least to a certain subset of people, and also serve as kind of a gateway to role playing. Even though,
Mm-hmm.
to be perfectly honest, doll play is role play. It's role play at a different level, nebulously defined rules, usually no rules, but as a way to like kind of lead people who collect dolls and play with dolls into role playing, something like that would be super interesting. It's just a matter of kind of finding the right entrance into that
Yeah.
market.
Yeah, we were thinking about how Gaslands, and by we I mean my partner and I and Game and a Curry. We were thinking about Gaslands, how to use Hot Wheels, and like all the rules are there. Everything is like pre-made for you. You just have to like customize your little cars and like do all that, do all the fun stuff that I really enjoy with your cars. Um, and we were thinking about Polly Pockets, but Polly Pockets have gotten expensive.
Hmm.
It's sort of weird how like things that used to be that you used to think were just like, oh, these are kind of cheap. These are like kids' toys, right? Now they're just like a little more expensive than they used to be. So maybe we'll do it with Polly Pockets or Barbie dolls or whatever dolls that we can find.
Yeah, toys in general, I honestly think it's an internet thing and a video game thing, but kids don't play with toys very much anymore. So
Hmm.
a lot of toys have become a lot more articulated and detailed, and as a result, more expensive. So
Right.
toys are honestly more marketed to adults now than kids, and like kids don't really play with toys all that often anymore, which is a shame because I was a toy loving kid. I honestly, thinking back on my childhood, the amount of time I spent playing with my Green Army Men or my GI Joes or my superhero figures, the fact that I didn't get into roleplay sooner honestly surprises me. But that aspect of play exists, but is definitely not as prominent as it once was.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Yeah, I think that it is kind of sad because, we're seeing a lot more of this shift towards social media and people or like kids, getting they're doing a lot more on their phones and on screens now than they once were.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I just remember back to the the show Comic Book Men on AMC. Someone brought in this old toy from the 1970s. It was called Marvel World, and it was literally just it was a paper doll set, but with Marvel superheroes. Basically, it was a New York City set made out of cardboard with little cardboard figures of the heroes and villains.
What? I
And
I gotta look this up.
yeah,
What is this
one
called?
of the guys had Marvel World growing up and was super excited about it. And he starts going on and on. He's like, back when I was a kid, we had these cardboard things, and this was the greatest thing ever because we had all the heroes, all the villains, and we could make them fight. And he's like, why don't kids play with stuff like this anymore? And one guy just looks at him and goes, they have the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are some cool things that are happening on the internet too. Like
Yeah.
definitely, there are a lot of cool games that are happening in the digital spaces that also rely on, a lot of social interaction like this,
Mhm.
which is really cool. Um, but I think like sometimes social media just like, it just sucks people in so much.
Mhm.
Uh, and especially, kids who are younger, it gets, very consuming, very time consuming.
But yeah, what one other thing about kind of this mixing of mediums that you have going on here, we've talked about it already a little bit, but maybe you have someone who the idea of sitting at a table and rolling dice and kind of coming up with a story in their head, which is typically what people associate RPGs with if they associate anything with RPGs, if they even know what the medium is. Maybe that doesn't hook someone, but if you get someone who is passionate about graphic design, um, like immediately in my head I think of there's this guy Finn McKenty on YouTube who does a channel called the Punk Rock MBA, and he's a graphic designer, and he also talks about DIY and punk rock and stuff like that. The game that you mentioned where you're making that poster one night only, that seems like something that would appeal to him, even though I know, based on everything from his videos, he's not someone who'd sit down and play D&D.
Hmm.
So, having a game that's based around a coloring book and paper dolls, or making a poster or something like that, that's a great way to bring people into the hobby who the idea of just kind of sitting around rolling dice and making up a story doesn't appeal to them. So again, I have to give you guys props for finding that way to hook people other than just saying it's an RPG about this. It's an RPG about this, but you also get to do this thing, and so people who like that thing might give it another look instead of just going I don't play RPGs or I don't know what an RPG is.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, I think it is really important to bring more people into role-playing games, right? There is still this sort of uh I would say like a stereotype of like, people playing Dungeons and Dragons aren't like the coolest people. And I think, we're getting to the point where tabletop role-playing games aren't necessarily just fantasy themed, or just using dice, or paper and pens. It can have those things, it can definitely have those things, but I think it's cool to experiment, it's cool to try things out, and see what's out there, and bring more people into the hobby, right? And again, this is just a medium, this is just like a way to tell stories, it's just like a way to interact with other people. um, but like at the end of the day, I guess it's like the genre that sort of might excite some people. So like depending on what they're interested in, depending on what kind of stories they want to tell, uh, this could be something that's for them.
Absolutely. Now, with you working within the Ravenloft setting and also working on this horror game, obviously there comes the question of horror RPGs, and there's a lot of different kind of takes on what makes a good horror RPG. So I'll turn that question on you, Banana. In your opinion, what are the key elements to making a successful horror RPG? What do you look for as a designer and as a player?
Um, so as a designer, I would say I look for things that players want to see, right? So fear is always subjective. That's something that we can't really just say like this is a scary thing. Like another person might just say this is silly. So I think that integrating what players want to see, that they think is scary, that's something that you can always do with horror RPGs. A great example of this is Bluebeard's Bride. They do a great job of like integrating, fears that the player characters might have, that the players want to see happen in stories. And then I think also about like the experience of like dimming the lights and like having the slow burning thing that slowly gets more and more intense, sort of like 10 candles, where or view screen, right? Where you're also sort of pushing the boundaries a little bit, you're using like a different medium to play with horror. Dread also does this, where it's like, okay, you're getting closer and closer and closer to this terrifying thing, this thing that will ultimately decide what happens to your player characters. I think that sort of that sort of experience of like you're holding your breath and like you're not sure of what's going to happen, that's an important experience to have when making horror games. um, and then as a player, I think I personally really enjoy seeing body horror like in games. I love body horror. I know it's not for everyone, but
Hmm.
for me, I love body horror. I love like just like weird stuff, like weird stuff uh, with whether it's like creatures or like messed up humans. That kind of thing really intrigues me. And also just like slow burning things. I think like slow burning psychological horror, that is what I'm all about.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean the body horror thing it's an interesting uh, concept just within RPGs. One of the things that I think RPGs allows for that gives it an advantage when it comes to horror is the most horrifying things for a lot of people are the things they create in their own minds.
Mhm.
And so within RPGs, because it's so reliant upon uh, people describing things and basically creating mental pictures and word pictures, there's only so much detail that you can go into in describing a situation, and the rest the players can fill in for themselves, and whatever they come up with may just be the most terrifying thing ever to them. So the medium definitely kind of provides a lot of great opportunities, especially when it comes to creating just the most grotesque, nightmarish thing with however many arms or eyes freaks you out in your own mind. That this really does feel like the medium for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with that.
In fact, it wasn't. I guess it's body horror in that it's body horror inspired, but one thing that will always stick with me is the way one of my dungeon masters once described a mains. It was the first time we ever came up against a mains, and the way he described it, just with like all the different rotting pieces of flesh stitched together and the sheer size of it, I was just like, oh. And now every time I think about mainses or throw them at my players, I just have that image that I created at the table in my mind of this thing.
That's yes, I love that feeling. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, one thing that can end up being, I guess, a little bit controversial or, maybe not work for everyone. A lot of horror RPGs kind of rely on what Stu from Vintage RPG once called table scares on the show.
Mm.
What's kind of your opinion of table scares? Do you think they can be effective if used correctly? Do you think some systems over rely on them? What's kind of your take on that side of horror RPGs?
Um, I I think it depends on the game,
Hmm.
right? Like, I think like with most games, you have to think about like the experience that you're trying to create, and if that's something that the players are looking for, and if that's something that you want to do, and that's something that you're designing for your audience, then I think it's okay as long as everyone at the table is fine with it and they know what to expect. Um, I usually don't design that way,
Yeah.
but but I think for some people, if they enjoy it, then I think it's fine.
Yeah, because I mean, you mentioned Dread. Dread's kind of the one that Stu was really talking about at the time when we brought that up, because we were talking about Call of Cthulhu and how that's kind of
Mm.
absent from that particular system. And one other guest one time talked about playing Dread in the dark, with the Jenga tower over top of a drip pan, so that when the tower fell, it just made a like loud clanking noise.
Yeah. I think if it's like an experiential thing,
Mm,
like that's kind of cool. Like I think as long as, again, I think as long as like players are expecting it,
mm,
um, then it's fine. I'm so like I design games with like, moodiness in mind. I think about
mm.
it with experience and with the space in mind as well. But the way I design is I think more about like seances, like how seances work and how everyone there has to want to do a thing. They're all a part of the magic circle, right? So if
Mhm.
you're a part of the magic circle, then you are all in, you are all into this thing. And it doesn't matter um, what like table scares you that like throw or lack of table scares that you throw into
Yeah.
like the situation, it'll still be terrifying. It'll still be scary because you're fully immersed into it. So it could be dead quiet. It could be like, uh, it could be like sort of just a bunch of people playing in the dark. And it'd still be scary, right?
Mhm.
Because you don't know what is going to happen to your characters.
Mhm. And that kind of gets at what I think Stu was going for there, and kind of my thoughts as well on horror RPGs, and that's, the replicability of the experience. So you can play Dread in the dark over top of a drip pan
Hmm.
with the Jenga tower, but if you play it with the lights on and just the Jenga tower normally, it's not going to be the same experience that you had previously. And then if you completely replicate the circumstances, you already know what to expect.
Hmm.
So adding all of that extra stuff onto the experience, uh, while it makes a great moment, it makes a great game once.
Hmm.
When you
Hmm.
bring that to the next table, or the next time you come to the table, you're not going to be able to recapture that.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
Whereas with something like Call of Cthulhu, or uh, something that builds atmosphere and relies on people's mental images,
Hmm.
and something like that, that experience is replicable, and at the same time different for each table,
Right.
because everyone's going to have a different image. So there's always something new to be drawn from that, rather than relying on some kind of, not to insult anyone or anything like that, some kind of gimmick.
Right. Yeah. And it is fun to experiment with different things, right? It
Mhm.
is fun to like, have different effects and lighting or like, things like that. But I think if it does depend on it too much, then it's and I'm thinking of this like in a product sense now, right?
Mhm.
It's going to be
Yeah.
harder to sell. It's going to be harder to sell, and it's going to be harder for you to get a group together to do XYZ thing.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's, again, with to use another example of a game that very recently came out and people are thinking about, that's one of the things that concerned me, hearing about Alice is Missing. You
Oh,
play a game like that, with the unique mechanic of everyone's using their cell phones. Um, Again, how does that feel when you take that to another table? And I think they took steps to address that, based on what I've heard. I haven't played the game, but
I could tell you, I've played the game and I would 100% play it again. I
gotcha.
love Alice is Missing. But also, again, I'm like one of those people that likes like psychological horror and stuff. But when I played it, this was like during the quarantine already. So it was like in my room, playing it. There was music. It was like the lights were all on. Everything was like on. But the immersion happened when you're texting. So for me, I'm like one of those people that like when I'm doing a thing on my phone, I get sucked in immediately. So like I don't see anything else around me. I like, this is why I don't text and drive. But like if I'm like walking down the street, I'm on my phone, I would probably hit into someone or something, and I wouldn't even be able to like see it. But the immersion happens with the phone, right?
Yeah.
So when you're playing this thing, like it's not really reliant on anything else, and you're just like, I mean, yes, there are cards, yes, there are prompts, yes, there's a timer, but the big thing happens when you're texting, and there's that immediacy. There's this like sense of urgency when you're playing because you need to know, what's going to happen next.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And again, not having played the game, it sounds like there are things that can make a second play, or a third, or continuous plays, still feel different, and still have that same experience, which is
Hmm.
what you want from an RPG, ideally. Even though so many of us get a game, play it once, and then it sits on our shelves, just because that's the kind of people we end up being as content creators in the RPG world. In
Hmm.
theory, other people will buy a game and play it several times.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I love one shots.
Mhm.
I just like love playing a thing once and then putting it away. But Alice is Missing is one of those games I will definitely play like again. But Also, one of my favorite movies is The Invitation. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's
I
on
haven't.
Netflix. It's like a very slow burning movie, and like I don't know anyone else that would actually sit through this thing twice. Like I would sit. I've seen this thing like 4 or 5 times now. I love that movie.
Now, is it one where you have to like keep going back to see different things that happen throughout the movie? Is that something that would
Nope.
potentially? Oh, okay,
Nope, it's not even. I just love it because it's so. I don't know. It's there's something about it that I just really enjoy. So the premise of the movie is that um, a couple is going to one of their friends' dinner parties. They're going to a dinner party, and they haven't seen this person in a very long time because one of the people in the couple, he and the person who's hosting the party, they used to be married. And so they got divorced after, I don't want to spoil too many things, but they got divorced and now they're seeing each other for the first time in like, I don't know, 2 years or something like that. And she's like completely different and she's got her own friends there at the dinner party, and things take like a strange turn because you realize that the woman may or may not be in a cult, and so like you're trying to figure out what's going on. And even though like I know everything that's happening in this movie, like I know what's going to happen, I still just like keep going back to it. I don't know why. This is like the only movie that I'm this involved with.
gotcha. Yeah, because I mean, like again, two movies that I really love are Donnie Darko and The Big Lebowski, and both of those are movies that I feel like you can't understand only watching once. But yeah,
Mhm.
that I mean, what you described is completely different. I will watch that movie
Tell me
since
what you think,
since you
for
recommended
sure.
it. At some point, I'm sure Elfie and I will watch that movie, and I'll let you know what I think of it when we do.
Please
Um,
do. Yeah. Um, I love dinner horror movies, like dinner party horror movies, like that as a genre. I just freaking love.
yeah, well, I mean that aspect of something happens at a dinner party like harkens back to the very origins of the genre itself. It's one of the like Agatha Christie, Edgar Allan Poe
As
tropes that
yeah.
brings us what horror is now. So there's definitely some, even Dracula. If you want to think of Bram
Hmm.
Stoker's Dracula as kind of the origin point of what we now consider horror, it's a story that involves multiple people coming together in a mysterious house. So
Hmm.
I mean that is essentially the synthesized horror genre in one kind of package, if you will. That
Yeah.
scenario.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, I was gonna say this is like coming back to we've taken like a whole 180 and we've gone back to Strud. Um, but yeah, I feel like suburban horror is definitely something I would like to see more in games, for sure.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that suburban horror hasn't made its way into games much because a lot of the movies that I think of as kind of staples of horror have that suburban uh, setting. I mean, like Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Hmm.
Uh, it's set in a camp, but there's a suburban quality to even Friday the 13th. Yeah, Friday the 13th. So
Hmm. Hmm.
that element is very present in people's conception of horror. So the fact that that hasn't made its way into gaming as much as it maybe could have is a little bit surprising.
Yeah, I've seen a few things here and there, like, Betrayal is obviously one of them. There's a new RPG that's coming out too. I think it was
Monty Cook?
Monty Cook thing. I don't remember the name of it though. Uh, Or house. Oh, the darkest house. Yeah. So there's the darkest house. There's also uh, Rookwood by Nerdy Pup Games. And I guess you could say Kids on Bikes has some horror elements to it if you really want to go that route. Um, but yeah, there's not a lot of there's not a lot of suburban horror stuff other than that.
Hmm. Yep. And I mean, like, we are now coming off of the monolith that was Stranger Things, so I imagine there's going to be maybe a little bit of a boost in that side now that the connection between gaming and suburban horror has been made in like a major pop culture way.
Yeah. And like I guess like going off of that, I would love to see some folk horror too.
Hmm.
Like I would love to see like a Midsommar type of game. That would be amazing.
Hmm. Have you given Witchburner a try at all?
I've been told to check it out, and I still have not yet like played it. I really want to, but eventually, that's on my list. It's on my list, my very long list of games I need to play.
I haven't been able to play it myself either. I've had Luca on the show, but I've heard great things about Witchburner, and it definitely has kind of those folk horror elements,
Nice.
specific to kind of the Yugoslavia area that Luca was born in. So
Oh,
that kind of Slavic flavor of horror is present for anyone who liked The Witcher. Witchburner would be kind of the quote unquote hard stuff of Slavic horror that you got the exposure to from The Witcher.
that's really fun. Yeah, there was this movie that I saw recently that has something like that. It's got like it's a movie about a Jotun or a group of people going into the woods and then encountering a Jotun. And I forgot the name of it, but it was really good. It was really well done. I feel like I gotta look that up now. Horror movie. The Ritual. It was called The Ritual. It was amazing.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I mean, folk horror is even something that you yourself have done a lot of good work in so far from what we've seen from Jungsha. That there's a ton of folk horror elements in that. So you know, again, anyone who missed the campaign, once it's available, Jungsha is cool. Check it out.
Thank you. Thank you. It is available for pre-order, so
Hmm.
you can still get it for a discounted price.
And you can find out what the Jungshu are. They're freaky, and at some point, I imagine they're going to make their way into my favorite book series, just based on information that has been given. Um, there, are you familiar at all with the Dresden Files?
Oh, yeah. Are they going to be in the Dresden Files?
I so there's the white, black, and red courts of the vampires, which all kind of cover different ground. White court vampires are basically well, they're succubus and
Mhm.
incubus, but they essentially function as twilight vampires. They're super pretty and they feed off of emotional energy and stuff like that. They're kind of like sexy Colin Robinson in a way.
So good. I can't imagine that, but I will try to imagine that.
But then there are the red court vampires, which are kind of like the modern monstrous conception of vampires. They have the like ageless, beautiful exterior, but they're giant bat creatures hidden just underneath the skin.
Nice.
And then you have the black court, who are the oldest vampires, and they're the Bram Stoker vampires. And in fact, Dracula in the Dresden Files universe was published to teach people how to kill Black Court vampires.
Oh, cool.
But there's a fourth court they've mentioned and never expanded upon, and that's the Jade Court. They operate in mostly China and Southeast Asia, and the theory is that those are the Zhengshi. But again, they've never appeared. So
That's super fun. I'm really excited. I mean, I don't even know much about. I mean, I've played like one game that's based on the Dresden Dolls. Oh, sorry, the Dresden Dolls, the Dresden Files. Oh my God. Um, but yeah, I am very interested in this now.
yeah, I mean the book series is fantastic. The first book, actually the first two books are a little bit rough to get through, but it's a series where every single book is an improvement on the last one. So
Ooh, that's exciting.
it's amazing, and if you like urban fantasy, Dresden Files is for you.
Nice. I think a while back, the IP got picked up by a publisher for games. Am I
Yeah,
remembering that correctly? Okay.
yeah. Evil Hat
Evil Hat,
makes all
right.
the Dresden Files stuff. There's a Dresden Files RPG. There's a card game. A lot of
Right,
good
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
I still have not played that RPG. As big a fan of the Dresden Files as I am, haven't played the RPG.
I enjoyed it. So I feel like yeah, it's definitely something that you could try. And I could probably try it online too, right? Like I'm sure there are Roll20 sheets or something like that for it.
Yeah, Elfie reads the books too. My dad reads the books. I could probably get them both in on a game, even though my dad doesn't really play games. But yeah, I should just get those books.
Yeah.
It's past time.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, as we're wrapping up, obviously we can't talk much about them, but just to reiterate to everyone, you do have, in addition to these other projects, two very big projects that are coming out this year. One of which is Dune. You are involved in that. That's coming in April of 2021. Um, Going into as much detail as you are legally allowed to, how did that collaboration come about? How did you get tapped to kind of work in the world of Dune?
So this is funny. My partner Herb, he met Chris Birch, the CEO of Modifius, at a convention. I believe it was PAX East. I could be wrong. It was either PAX East or PAX Unplugged. Anyway, he met Chris Birch, and I guess they hit it off. And then he somehow put two and two together and was like, "You're a Libra." And then they realized that they had the same birthday and the same like everything, which is really strange. And then one thing led to another. I got his business card, and so I emailed him, asking him, if there are any projects that he needed help with, and that's how I got on the project team for Dune. um, but yeah, everyone on the team is great. They're a lot of fun to work with. They're very sweet. And I think, yeah, I can't talk much about the book itself, but it's uh, it's got a lot of stuff to it. It's like chock full of stuff.
Now, if you're not allowed to answer this next question, it's fine and we can move on. But is it using the same like 2D20 system that a lot of their games use?
um, I believe I can say yes. Yeah. I think so, yeah.
Gotcha. Because again, for anyone who's unfamiliar, Modifius is, for one thing, great. They have the Conan IP right now.
Mm-hmm.
Their 2D20 Conan game is pretty good. They also have my favorite Star Trek game, Star Trek Adventures, which is a fantastic game. Anyone who's a Star Trek fan, get that book. The way that game plays is just it'll be like a glove over your hand if you're a Star Trek fan. Uh, it hits all the right notes. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. If they want to do more stuff with the Fallout IP, fans out there, definitely push them into doing that and asking me to be on their writing team. All I'm saying.
Are you a big fan of Fallout?
I love Fallout. And I'm gonna keep pushing them to telling me, hey, you can write for whatever. I don't know what it's gonna be, but I would really like to do something with Fallout.
Here's Banana Chan's New Vegas source book.
I would love that. I would love to do something with New Vegas. That's like my favorite of all the Fallouts. Like New Vegas was the best for me.
That's the one. I've not played much of any of the Fallout games. I have Fallout New Vegas, but that's the one that everyone's like, "Oh, you need to play that one."
Yeah, it is. I mean, I absolutely love it because it's got so much flavor to it. It's like definitely the one that stands out the most. Uh, we're not going to talk about like, 76 or anything. But like even Fallout 3, I mean, the previous Fallouts, like 1 and 2, they're completely different games, right? But like Fallout 3, even though it's like very good still, like the storylines and everything are great, like New Vegas definitely stands out in terms of story.
And then obviously, we've talked a little bit about it pretty much as we can, but you're also working on the new Ravenloft campaign setting for Wizards of the Coast. I mean, that's got to be a feather in your cap right there. There's the big name, the one that everyone knows from RPGs, the one that you could look at a person on the street and go, you know what D&D is? They probably have some inkling. You're doing work with them, so kudos on that. That's
Thank you. I really hope people like it.
cool. So as we're kind of running up against our time here, obviously we've talked about some of the stuff that you have coming up. Is there anything else that you want to promote right now, just as we're kind of wrapping things up for the evening?
Oh gosh. So Junction is still on pre-order. You can definitely get that before it comes out. There is also Damos Academy, which is uh, the coloring book TTRPG that Austin Knight and Amanda Call were working on about the boarding school, the creepy boarding school that's got some like Stephen King vibes. And One Night Only by Senfon Lim and I'm not sure when that's coming out, but it is a thing that we are working on. So it's very exciting.
Awesome. Cool. Well, guys, that is going to do it for tonight's edition of Rollin' Bones. Banana, it's been great to have you on and talk about all kinds of different topics, from dolls to Scooby-Doo to horror. This was a lot of fun, and I'm glad that you were able to come on and talk about this stuff with us here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, guys, next week we are going to be doing a review of Escape from Skullcano Island. I have the book now. It is, going out to backers, so we're going to talk about Levi Combs' latest mad scientist creation, Escape from Skullcano Island. It's going to be amazing. And I just want to say, for anyone out there who is interested in going to this convention, there is a high likelihood at this point, I'm still working out the details, but there's a very high likelihood that I will be at North Texas RPG Convention this year. So if that's on your list, if you are wanting to go to conventions this year and you want to make it out to North Texas, you might be able to end up in a game that I am playing in or GMing, depending on if I can get something submitted in time. So that's something I'm excited for. I've been wanting to do gaming conventions for well over a year now. So that's happening now. And I am over the moon excited for it. So next week we'll be talking about Escape from Skullcano Island. That's going to be great. Banana, thank you again for coming on.
Thank you.
And until next time, whether you rolled a 1 or a 20, I am so glad that you rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard, and I'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.